My house is worth so much more than when I bought it.
Yeah, so is it a good time to get a home equity loan?
Moving forward with the Decker team. Moving forward together with the Decker team.
We've created for you access to over 423 episodes of Life's Inside Track on how to make your house home, on how to thrive and strengthen and heal your relationships, how to make good use of your money and your equity. And the great news is you can access them from home, your office, or even on the go. So Ken.
Yeah, so I guess a home equity loan, whether it's a good idea, would really depend on what the purpose is that you have planned for that money.
So on this episode, we're going to learn when a consolidation loan might be a great, or an equity loan might be a great idea, and when it might be not such a great idea.
So one of the things that I've always said is, please do not use your home as a giant ATM. And every time the equity goes up, you remortgage, take the money out, pay the debts that you've paid, and buy some stuff at Stuff Mart. Right.
And the reason we can say and actually plead with you not to do it is we had become expert at using our house as an ATM. We didn't learn the first time or the second time. It took us a few times around the block. And yet what breaks my heart more than anything, because we eventually figured it out and we stopped using our house as an ATM. And what really breaks my heart is when I go meet somebody that is now elderly, they're getting older, they purchased their house for very little money in the market in which they purchased it because they've had it for a long time. And the loan is essentially as much as the value of the home is. It's like, what? How does that happen? Well, because the house became the tool to purchase whatever they needed to purchase.
Yeah, really to live a lifestyle beyond their earnings.
Yeah.
Because they were utilizing the earnings of the house.
Right. And so in that case, probably not the best idea, because you're actually moving backwards. Because then even if you wanted a reverse mortgage down the road, and that is something some people do, and yet if you don't have any money in it, now what are you supposed to do?
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, even we did it. We would consolidate. Like, basically when the mortgage came due, we'd take out more, pay off all our debts. And then what they created was this really neat thing called a home line of equity, right? A home equity loan or whatever. And what happens is now you have a fixed amount of credit on your house, and you have a certain amount that you can use, I'll say willy-nilly. You can spend it willy-nilly because you don't have to go to the bank and say, oh, I made a mistake. I paid too much. I bought too much on my credit card. I spent too much at Christmas, or I did this, or I did that. You just simply write the check on your line of credit to pay it off. And we did that for a while, where our line of credit was like our cushion, because our business is somewhat seasonal.
Yeah.
And so in the summer, we'd be making a lot more money than we would in the winter. And so our line of credit would go up over the winter. And then we work hard to pay it down. And then in the fall, it would start climbing again. And then sometimes in April, we'd have to pay our income tax because we hadn't put enough aside. We'd have all these issues that the line of credit saved us from. And it wasn't the best. What we do now is in the summer, we save so that we have cash, so that when in the winter it's less, the cash dwindles. So we're not going into credit every winter. We're using up our reserves, which I think is a better way of doing it.
Right. So consolidation loans, if you're doing it for the purpose of paying off debt repayment, the struggle becomes, are you going to change your habits? Or does it just become a perpetual cycle of redoing the same thing again and again and again, to the point that now you owe essentially as much on your house as it's worth or really close. I mean, you have to keep 20% equity, but depending on the condition and depending on the market conditions, you might not really have 20% even when they say you have 20% in, and yet it could have been paid off 5 times over sometimes. And so the question is, can you take a look at your habits? We eventually had to be honest with ourselves. A lot of these conversations we have with you are not comfortable. Have you ever noticed that? They're like really not comfortable. They're not comfortable for us to have it. Probably not comfortable for you either, because what it causes us to do is go, when was a time that we did that pattern of behavior? And so we have a tendency to, once the pain is removed from our debt load, then we let off the change in our behavior and go back to our old pattern of behavior.
Yeah. And I think it's easier to talk about these things because we're standing on the story. We're not in the story of being in that place. We've conquered that issue. And the way we conquered it was a coach, someone to help guide us. Right. We adjusted credit limits on credit cards when it was a problem, bringing them down.
Bringing them down, way down. And I don't know if you've ever made a ornament for the Christmas tree, but that can be a really cool skill. When you know that you've had enough of them credit cards that you can't help yourself, you could either freeze it in a chunk of ice in your freezer so that it takes some time before you can access that credit card. Just don't write down the number and then buy the stuff online. I mean, have the number somewhere, but not easy access. So that can be a little brain trick. Or the other thing you can do if you're actually done with it and you know it bites you, it gets in your way and you can't just leave it alone, time to make a Christmas ornament. And that is, take it, cut it into little pieces, put it in the oven, turn it on about 350 degrees, leave it for about 20 minutes, put a little string on it, and now it'll be this beautiful colored piece of plastic for your Christmas tree.
A little collage.
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting the steps we can take to overcome our habitual spending habits. And it can make a world of difference, right?
Now, the great news is if I'm going to take that equity and instead of debt repayment, instead of lifestyle, instead of paying for my instant gratification that I couldn't afford to pay for, now instead I use it to wake up my sleepy asset, wake up the money in my house and let it work for me. Now, that is a good use of consolidating.
So we need to, it's not really consolidating. It's withdrawing equity to buy something else, put that equity into something else to leverage, right?
Right.
And so that's a beautiful option. It really is, waking up the sleepy asset.
And we have done that many times. And it even sometimes gives you access to a dream that you had or something you want to do that you just need access to a little more cash. And you can pull it out and let it work for you.
Yeah. And you might be wondering, well, what equity do I have? What options do I have with that equity based on my financial situations? What moves would you make if it was your situation? And we're happy to assist with that.
And one thing you might do if you haven't done it is read the Wealth Formula. If you have not purchased that book, it is available on doubledecker.life and on deckerteam.com. You can purchase the book if you haven't already read it. And not only may it help you with debt repayment, if you've already handled that, just, read the story because it's a fun story, but skip through the first through pretty quickly and then get to the part about what can I do with the equity in my house? How can I wake up that sleeping asset that's in my bank account or in my house, actually, that could be helping me thrive and make better use of my money?
Yeah. So thanks for the privilege of growing alongside you. We're passionate about helping families thrive in their life, both at home and in their business.
Moving forward with the Decker team. Moving forward together with the Decker team.